Hey, everybody, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. And today is a special guest episode. And we like to bring these to you every now and then because we have important information. We need to bring an expert on and show you how this important subject matter affects each and every one of you in your everyday lives. Merle, can you bring in the guest, please?
Yeah, and I think this is, as you said, Barry, a very special occasion. Here we are sitting post-election. We still don't have a declared winner, but leading up to the election, we had some issues happening around censorship and certain information regarding the Democrat candidate was conspicuously left out of the media, specifically from Twitter. Facebook and Google had some things to do with it. We're going to be talking to Rex M. Lee today, who's a friend of the show, a personal friend of mine. He is a cybersecurity privacy advisor and a tech journalist with over 35 years of experience. He actually had the privilege to, based on his research that he's done over years, to actually provide staffers at the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce and Science and Transportation with questions that they could ask of the CEOs of the various tech giants, as I mentioned, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, to get down to the bottom of serious questions. So today, Rex is actually going to be covering some of the things that he sent to the U.S. Senate and the Commerce Subcommittee with a focus on harmful tech predatory business practices and ending with digital oppression regarding soft censorship and closing with suggestions revolving around the changes to the Communications Decency Act 230. That's the 230 Act of the Communications Decency Act. So this is going to be interesting. Rex, this is an historic time that we're dealing with. Why don't we start out with your background dealing with the Senate committees? That's an awfully big honor that you've been a part of.
Yes, this isn't the first U.S. Senate subcommittee that I've been a part of. I've been an advisor for the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as a House Judiciary Committee in 2018 regarding the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal involving Mark Zuckerberg, and also with the House Judiciary Committee regarding Google's data collection business practices involving Sundar Pichai. Both of those CEOs, and Sundar Pichai is the CEO of Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. Both of those CEOs were a part of this hearing as well. And so a lot of the information that I had sent to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees in 2018, I also sent to the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee as well.
Right on, right on. Hey, so tell us about, I mean, here we are. We're sitting in a period right now where our way of life here in America, as far as freedom of the press goes, which is protected under the First Amendment, seems to be under attack. And it's important to know that this whole thing, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, has everything to do with our liberties that are given to us according to the Declaration of Independence by God. Meaning that we have a right to know, as it says in the Declaration, we are made in his image, so then we are like him. So and the only way to be governed is by consent of the governed. That means we have a right to know what's happening behind the scenes. These tech giants that are out there actually have a monopoly on the information that's allowed to get to us, and they have decided to form that picture any way they want to their advantage. How is this in the Senate? How have you been able to help these guys to wade through all of that and help them and help the American people?
Well, what I'd like to do, there's a lot of information, so I put together a deck, and I'd like to go over that deck with you, which will touch base on the information that I sent to them and how relevant it was to Section 230. You know, what I want to clarify real quickly, going back to what you were just saying, they're not censoring us or oppressing our civil liberties directly. They're doing it through soft censorship, which I want to get into. They're not publishers. They're not a government. They can do anything they want with their platforms. I'm actually against the government regulating these platforms. I'd rather have the free market do so. However, what they're doing is inconsistent in terms of their business practices. They're almost deceptive trade practices because they don't evenly apply the same rules to everybody across the board while they're protected by Section 230 from anything that I post or anybody else posts. So they shouldn't even be censoring or adding warnings to anybody's tweets or information because they're not liable. They're protected. So that's where they're acting like a publisher. They're acting like everybody on their platform is a journalist, and they're the New York Times, and they're going to get sued if somebody puts false information out there, and they're inconsistent about how they apply those rules. So what I like to do is jump into the deck that I prepared for you guys, and we can touch base on some of these issues. The other thing that they're doing that's a form of soft censorship and oppression, what I call digital oppression and cyber tyranny, involves other civil liberties such as our privacy. We're being exploited at the expense of our privacy, and I'll go over some of those issues. So those were some of the side issues aside from censorship that I sent to the U.S. Commerce Subcommittee.
I think that these are all related, Rex. Can you go into the Communication Decency Act, the 230, and just maybe do a quick summary of how that's being used to protect these big tech companies, and how those things are being, as you mentioned, how they're not being applied evenly or fairly?
Okay, let me open up my deck here, and so I'll get that going. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let me start it. So what is CDA exactly? Well, it's simply, it's the Communication Decency Act of 1996, known as Section 230. Section 230 deals with liability in terms of what people are publishing on internet platforms. This simply it's real simple. It just simply protects the platform owner from any liability from misinformation that one of their subscribers posts. That's all it does. It doesn't protect them from all violations of consumer protection and privacy laws that are out there. Those are side laws and issues that we need to deal with these companies. So again, I was a advisor for the committee for the 2020 congressional hearing that involved Mark Zuckerberg, CEO and chairman of Facebook, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet, again, Google's parent company, and Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter. So let me jump into a little bit of what I sent to the subcommittee staffers. I'm just showing a little email here. I've redacted the names of my contacts there. I don't want to make anybody angry. I'm just simply trying to inform people of the information that I sent to the subcommittee. So that's just an email between me and the staffers addressing not only censorship, but also I wanted the senators to also address addictive and harmful apps and predatory and harmful business practices. So we had a conference call about that, and then we exchanged an email conversation, and then I started sending them information. So exactly what information did I send to them? First of all, I sent them information about how I've been censored on Twitter, and I'll go into that as we go along. Again, it's not really being censored by Twitter as much as it's soft censorship that has to do with nebulous rules violations. That's how they censor you. They don't really go in and just stop everything you're doing, or they edit your tweets or anything like that. Basically, they lock you out of your account,
right,
make you jump through a few hoops to get back into it, and it becomes a real aggravating process. So the next thing that I sent to them has to do with indiscriminate surveillance and data mining business practices employed by Google, Facebook, and Twitter. This means that these companies not only are collecting the information associated with the use of their apps and platforms, but they're also collecting your personal and employment information that has nothing to do with the use of their platforms. In other words, they're monitoring, tracking, and data mining you for profits 24/7, 365 days a year, which I think should be illegal. Again, it's not just consumers that are being surveilled and data mined, it's teens and children under 13, which again is a violation of the federal, the FCC, or I'm sorry, the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC's COPA, which protects children regarding online surveillance and data mining and so forth.
Let me stop you right there, Rex. And I would just want to make sure we make a point here, because the audience, you know how it happens when we talk about this kind of stuff. People will say, well, so what? You know, I don't have anything to hide. Besides the fact that this is breaking a FTC law, why should we care?
Okay, I'll show you in a few minutes. Let me go through this, and that's one of the first things that I address, and I'll show you why, okay?
Okay.
So the other thing is I sent them information regarding deceptive trade practices with exploitive and predatory terms of use. This is why you should care. I'm starting to get into that. The terms of use that you accept when you click on I agree, there's a lot of issues with those terms of use. I've been researching these things dating back to 2013. They contain things like hidden product warnings and contradictive terms of use. So those are some of the side issues that I sent to the senators that I felt they should address with these CEOs. So again, we're talking about intrusive and addictive apps and platforms developed by Google and Facebook, not according to Rex Lee, but I sent them admissions made by Sean Parker, the co-founder of Facebook, and Tristan Harris, a former lead product designer from Google. So you'll see those actual admissions regarding harmful and addictive technology. I also sent them information on uncontrollable pre-installed Chinese surveillance and data mining technology developed by Google for Baidu, an app developer out of China. This means that when you buy a product supported by the Android OS, if this application permission statement or interactive application permission command string is supporting your device, you're being surveilled and data mined by a company out of China. And you can't control this because it's associated with the pre-installed apps that you can't uninstall. So that's another way that you're being harmed. You just don't see this harm, but you're being harmed. And then this is the biggest one of all. This is how people are being harmed and they don't know they're being harmed. The use of manipulative technologies associated with artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, and suggestive advertising technologies. This was part of the information that I sent to the U.S. Senate Committee, the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee regarding the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. This technology is horrifying. It's like imagine they're censoring us through soft censorship, but imagine the Manchurian candidate, but the voters now can be brainwashed. That's exactly what happened with the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal regarding the use of artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, and suggestive technology. That was applied to the 80 million Facebook subscribers' personal and employment information that the app collector collected and sold to Cambridge Analytica, and they used that to identify the personal preferences of the Facebook subscribers to send them targeted ads to manipulate them into voting for a presidential candidate. We're not talking about suggestive advertising, manipulating people to go buy a hamburger here or go to a movie or click on a link to buy something. We're talking about this technology being used to manipulate people into voting for a candidate, and basically it's brainwashing at a higher level. And then again, I sent information regarding violations of consumer and child protection and privacy laws regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, Federal Communications Commission, Department of Justice, and state attorneys general's offices nationwide. What I found shocking, Barry and Merle, was the fact that most of the information, with the exception of the information regarding censorship, was not used for this hearing, which showed me that the hearing was more about politics.
So what was used?
Just basically the information I sent them regarding how Twitter censors people, and that was about it. They did want to get into some privacy, but due to time limits, I guess they never got into those issues. And it was horrifying for me because they had all three CEOs there. Censorship may affect the New York Post or somebody like me who's a tech journalist. It may affect some people at a high level, but it's mostly affecting people who are in publishing. That doesn't affect the everyday citizen. And that's what these hearings are for. They're for resolve regarding how citizens are being exploited for financial gain at the expense of their privacy and those issues.
And I just want to make a point here because there is a large portion of the population that's out there, voting population, that gets all of their news from social media.
Right.
So when we talk about the fact that these aren't these tech giants aren't a part of they're not publishers. Well, they technically may not be. However, they're acting as though they are. They're performing the same duty that they are. So when for instance, Twitter decided to leave out the New York Post article, which, funny thing, Alexander Hamilton founded the paper. It's the oldest one with the third largest circulation in the United States about Joe Biden's nefarious activities in China and the Ukraine. That has an impact at the voter polls. And this is a giant subject, but we had this whole Senate hearing happen, and it seems frustrating to me as a citizen of America that what ends up happening afterwards, you have a show trial. When the senators get to speak, it sounds like they're campaigning to get elected, and afterwards, nothing happens. Google, Facebook, Twitter end up making even more money than they ever did before that. Very frustrating.
Exactly. And that's, Merle, what we're talking about here is consumer and child exploitation by way of products of necessity. Now, the collection of your personal and employment information is relevant to censorship because they're taking that data and they're massaging it and they're applying AI, predictive analytics, and suggestive advertising technologies to that information to then motivate you to go into that booth and vote for somebody. And this is still happening without a doubt. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica was just the tip of the iceberg. And it wasn't Trump that was the first person to use data that was collected from Facebook. Exactly. Obama did it in 2012. And I think he just ripped a page from that playbook, as well as Ted Cruz did as well, regarding Facebook, Cambridge Analytica.
So basically, these social media platforms are acting as a gateway for the journals, the different publications. So it still seems like censorship to me. I mean, you could play both sides of it, but if you're letting some things in that you like and other things you're leaving out, that's censorship.
Yeah, unlike a publication can't use AI, predictive analytics, or suggestive technology to brainwash their users into taking actions based on the user's personal preferences. This is what I'm talking about here is the 21st century version of subliminal advertising, which was banned in the 20th century. This is way worse. This is way worse.
Well, wait, don't those laws, I mean, I was going to ask you about that, because those laws where they were, you'd go to the movie and they would flash a picture of a Coke and a hot dog, and suddenly, and you wouldn't know that you saw it, but suddenly you have this overwhelming desire to have a Coke and a hot dog, and you go and buy it. Don't those laws apply to this?
No, they don't, because this is new technology. When we get into solutions, I'll address this. We need an electronic bill of rights, but I don't want to get ahead of us. But yeah, this is no different. This would be like every 100 frames, vote for Trump or vote for Biden. Right. Every 100 frames.
Yes,
it's the same thing. So it's very important. So what we're talking about here is exploitation by way of products of necessity. Why is that? Well, because every product that is out there today that is connected and supported by the Android OS, Apple iOS, and Microsoft Windows OS is backed by surveillance and data mining business practices employed by Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, and other tech and telecom giants, including those from China and Russia, such as ByteDance, the developers of TikTok. So what happens here, I'll go into this, and this will tie into censorship. So what's going on here again is consumer and child exploitation. And it all ties back to the agreements that you're accepting. When you click on I agree and don't read the fine print, you don't understand exactly what you're accepting. I read those things. And it took me 4 months to analyze the pre-installed apps and and the terms of use that supported all of those pre-installed apps that supported a Samsung Galaxy Note that I had purchased from T-Mobile. And at the end of it, basically, I understood that after I clicked on I agree, I was basically accepting a cyber enslavement agreement that enabled these app developers to monitor, track, data mine me, and exploit me for profits at the expense of my privacy, cybersecurity, civil liberties, and safety, because they're using addictive and harmful technologies. So, Merle and Barry, I think we all can agree that losing privacy is bad enough, but to be exploited at the expense of your privacy, civil liberties, safety, and even cybersecurity should be unacceptable to every American out there, or anybody who is a free thinking individual.
I agree with that, Rex, but I mean, you know, I've had these types of conversations with people that actually tell me, I don't care. It's really not affecting me.
Because they don't know. If they understand this information, they do. When people go through, when I speak at trade shows and I go through this with people at trade shows, they understand. They're in other words, Merle, they haven't been unplugged from the matrix, okay?
That's a good way of putting it.
This guy called me Morpheus one time at an airport because I basically unplugged him from the Silicon Valley matrix by showing him where these hidden application permissions are in his smartphone, and how much data they're collecting on him, and how he was being used as an uncompensated information producer who's being exploited by these companies.
Some people, go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, we interviewed you about 6 months ago, Rex, and I remember one thing that shocked me terribly was that if you have a device with a camera and a microphone, they are surveilling you pretty much 24/7. Correct?
It's indiscriminate,
and tracking you.
It's indiscriminate surveillance and data mining business practices. This means that they're collecting, the majority of the information that they collect from you has nothing to do with the use of their apps and their platforms, because they're surveilling you and data mining you 24/7, 365 days a year, which should be illegal. The only time they should be able to data mine you is when you're on their app and their platform, and they're collecting the information that's associated with the use of that app and that platform. They have no right to follow you around all day, attached to your GPS, knowing where you're going, and then also controlling your mic and camera, recording everything you're doing throughout your day. That has nothing to do, if you subscribe to Facebook, what you do during the day when you're at your doctor or doing your job has nothing to do with Facebook. It has nothing to do with the use of their platform, and they're collecting that information, which is the most valuable resource on the planet, and they're exploiting it for financial gain, and they're not even paying you for it.
Well, as a matter of fact, they're selling that information, are they not?
Exactly.
Every one of those companies.
Well, so this is bad enough. I mean, that they're doing this. But what is, Rex, maybe in time is flying by, as I'm noticing. So but let's talk about what the end game is for these. Why are they doing this? And how is this, what is the net effect on the individual?
This will lead up to it. When you click on I agree, you agree to give up your personal and employment privacy while being exploited without being compensated 24/7, 365 days a year. This affects you. You also agree to be enslaved as an uncompensated information producer working for Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and other tech and telecom giants 24/7, 365 days a year, simply by using the products of necessity. When you watch your TV, they make money. When you ride in your connected car, they make money. When you use your smartphone, they make money. When you use your connected appliance, they make money. So that's where you're being exploited, as well as teens and children. So again, a single intrusive app can collect over 5,000 data points from the end user, which culminates into the most valuable resource on the planet, which is your personal and employment information, or your digital DNA, which is the most valuable resource on the planet. This is the end game. This is how they collect that information. And what's worse, Merle, is they're using addictive technology to do this, and harmful technology, not according to Rex Lee, but according to the people who actually develop these platforms. I'll read you a couple of admissions here, one from Sean Parker, the co-founder of Facebook. It's a social validation feedback loop, exactly the kind of thing like a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting vulnerability in human psychology. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. The inventors, creators, it's me, it's Mark Zuckerberg, it's Kevin Systrom of Instagram, it's all of these people understood this consciously, and we did it anyways. This is Sean Parker during an Axios interview basically stating that these companies are brainwashing their users to manipulate them, which is exactly what they did with Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, not to go buy a hamburger, but to go vote for a politician. Tristan Harris had this to say: the average person checks their phones 150 times a day. Why do we do this? Are we making 150 conscious choices? One major reason why is the number one psychological ingredient in slot machine: intermittent variable rewards. Addictiveness is maximized when the rate of reward is most variable. When the rate of reward is most variable. By shaping the menus we pick from, technology hijacks what we perceive as our choice and replaces them with new ones. He just basically stated that they're brainwashing you by hijacking what your original choice would be and replacing it with what they think you should be thinking about, or an action that you're doing. So in other words, they're manipulating you into taking actions that you would not have otherwise taken. And this is all relevant to the Section 230 hearing, and they didn't address any of this information or even these admissions from these industry insiders and leaders.
So Rex, it's these very same people who are really selling, that's not even selling, they're giving away free
cocaine,
cyber crack.
Yes.
And these are the very same people who are manipulating who we're actually electing in government, the very same people that they're having to be called up to in front of the Senate committee. These people are all people that own mansions, which as a public servant, I've always scratched my head. How is it that you've been a public servant for 40 years and you have a mansion and 3 other beach houses?
On what started out at $25,000 a year salary and maybe $100,000+ now, and you've got $100 million in the bank.
Well, is it my imagination, or do these people want to instill some type of a one world government that has control over each and every one of us, and that we are actually used to serve their elite purpose?
So, I don't want to get into any conspiracy theories, but H.W. Bush addressed this with New World Order back in 1991, which is when I became an independent. I used to be a diehard conservative Republican, and then I basically removed myself from the Republican Party at that time and became an independent. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just,
We're going to have to start winding this up, guys, and get to the crux of it all. And so my question is, what can we do about this? Because the first thing that comes to my mind is that I am quite sure the government is infiltrated with all of these lobbyists from all these companies.
Yep, they are. They are. And that's what's happening. As a matter of fact, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Alphabet, said that basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said Washington is an incumbent machine where lobbyists write the laws. Yeah. And that's the truth. And those are quotes that you can look up from Eric Schmidt of Google. They figured that out, and that's why they wrote all these laws and were able to manipulate these laws to give themselves basically protection. So, at the end of the day, what I suggest is that your viewers, again, don't take my word for any of this. I've done my own research and I get my information from other sources. 2 great documentaries are out based on what we just talked about. One is a Netflix document called The Great Hack, which is based on this Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. The other one is The Social Dilemma, which is in regards to addictive and harmful technology. And again, this is Tristan Harris is one of the backers of this document. He's doing great work. I vilify him a little bit with his quote, but he's gone to the light side as well. Again, if your viewers don't know this, I'm not just a tech journalist, I'm an industry insider, and I work in the industry today developing apps and platforms within the fintech section of the industry, and they're not addictive apps. But you know, he's come to the light. He's come from the dark side to the light, and is educating people on this. And Social Dilemma has taken off on Netflix. It's the most watched document in Netflix history. And I suggest anybody who owns a smartphone, tablet, PC, or connected product,
which is
watch that program. So again, we talked about harmful. It's not just me reporting this. There's all sorts of stories out there about harmful use of technology. Here's a picture of that Chinese surveillance and data mining technology that was in a Samsung Galaxy Note smartphone. I don't want you or us to get sued by Samsung or Google. There's a screenshot of it, which has been published in many articles. These are hidden application product warnings that are hidden within your device, and they're not published online. That's another violation of law, which is associated with deceptive trade practices. Again, all the app permissions, whether you use TikTok, Facebook, or Amazon, will tell you all of that information. I told you they're collecting the 5,000 data points. It's within the permissions, and you have to know where to go to look to get that, but they tell you how much information, but they hide it within the device. Again, what we talked about is digital oppression and cyber tyranny. I myself have been censored by nebulous terms and conditions. Again, they locked me out of my account because they say I exhibit behavior that I exhibit automated behavior like I'm some bot and not a real journalist. So they lock me out of my account when I start tweeting about simply my news articles. Nothing political, nothing left, nothing right. Hey, this is just, I'm a tech journalist, here's some information. And then they start to lock me out because the information I'm putting out there is not favorable to Silicon Valley. So I think what we want to do is talk a little bit about where do we go from here, right?
Right.
Okay, so one of the things that can happen is Congress can make changes to CDA 230. They can still identify these platforms as publishers, yet at the same time protect them from something liable that the user puts on there, like any type of illegal activity, hacked information, and that sort of thing. They can actually write their rules a little bit differently, but when they start acting like a publisher and they start banning news articles and information from legitimate sources, that's where they can handcuff them and still keep them protected at the same time.
But that seems unlikely based on the fact that they seem to be being paid off by these exact entities, which keeps them in power.
There you go. That's the conundrum or the paradox that Eric Schmidt said. You know, our lawmakers don't write laws to protect us. They're an incumbent machine allowing the lobbyists to write laws. There was a
That's
guy,
the big secret, right?
Jonathan
the legislature
Gruber
isn't writing laws anymore.
If you don't know who Jonathan Gruber is, he joked about this during, he would talk at trade shows, and he always joked that he was the one who wrote the Affordable Health Care Act, yes, and not the politicians, and that he wrote it in a torturous manner so that citizens wouldn't understand they're being screwed.
I don't think he was joking.
No, he wasn't. And it's the same thing. The Silicon Valley lobbyists are writing these laws. Right. And that's the problem. They should have somebody like me come to Washington. I'll help them write real laws that protect consumers and children.
But they're not going to do that, as evidenced by what just happened with the Senate committee regarding 230. So what's the other alternative here? Because that's a brick wall.
There you go. You just that was purely coincidental, Merle. I brought up a slide that basically addresses that. These hearings basically turn into meaningless resolve and phony apologies. And I actually wrote an article for the Epic Times that says Facebook and Google congressional hearings, meaningless resolve and phony apologies. The other issue is they're not enforcing existing consumer protection, consumer and child protection and privacy laws regarding harmful technology, deceptive trade practices. They're breaking these laws today, not according to me. I read the laws. I read what the FTC says. First of all, their user agreements are illegal because the collective text on the Samsung Galaxy Note terms of use exceeded over 3,000 pages of complicated legalese. And according to the FTC and consumer protection laws that are regulated by state attorney generals, a consumer agreement must be legible and readable and understandable before the consumer buys the product. And that's not the case that's going on here. But we have agencies that I don't know if they're in the back pocket of these lobbyists too, but people at the FTC and the state attorney general's offices just simply are not enforcing existing laws to protect consumers. So again, like soft censorship, this is another form of selective law enforcement that we see going on today in this country as well. I almost feel like we live in a third world banana republic because the laws are not evenly applied to everybody, whether it has to do with politics or technology.
So Rex, we've got about 3 minutes. What can we do?
Less.
So again, there could be a class action lawsuit based on deceptive trade practices. They do not evenly apply their rules. So if there's a lawyer out there, he ought to go into this. Give me a call. You'll know how to get a hold of me after this, but I'll help show you where all of these user agreements are being inconsistently applied. That's a deceptive trade practice. Has nothing to do with being protected by 230. They have to apply these rules evenly across the board. And we didn't see that, did we, Merle? And Barry, because the 230 hearing, Senator Cory Gardner addressed this fact with Jack Dorsey that the Ayatollah of Iran could spread disinformation about the Holocaust, yet the New York Post can't post a legitimate news article. So that's another example of how these rules are not applied evenly across the board.
Okay, we're really gotta wind this up. How about where can people get in touch with you and get more information? And we got to go.
Okay. All right. I was just going to touch on we need an electronic bill of rights, as well as let the free market. If you don't like Twitter, go to Parler. You can go to www.mysmartprivacy.com, and I have all my information there, including the episodes that I'm also exposing this information on regarding CyberTalk USA.
Hey, thank you very much, Rex Lee. We will be in touch with you again. I hope that you guys watch the special, the network special that Rex brought about, and we will talk to you. Merle and I will talk at you tomorrow. Thanks, Rex.
Thank you. All have a blessed day. Bye.